Hi everyone, it's Sword Legacy Omen release day. I'm Ash from Team 17 and I'm here with Arthur from Fableware Narrative Design. Arthur's dressed as a king right now because we are streaming a game that is set in the realm of Broken Britannia. Somebody's just poked their head around the door to have a laugh at us. We're 2 seconds in, I'm already being distracted.
A well-deserved laugh, a well-deserved.
Yeah, I think one of my colleagues is laughing that I have a webcam perched on the back of an office chair to get it really close to my face like this. Anyway, where
You're
were
not
we?
the one with the inflatable crown, think about that.
We're both doing embarrassing things. So, Arthur, this is a game you've been working on for a very, very long time in association with Firecast Studio. It's a tactical RPG, my favourite genre. Tell us about it as I start the intro. So you might have to talk over some voiceover. Let's see what happens.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Ash, for having us. It's finally we're releasing Sword Legacy Omen. We're all ecstatic here. I mean, we're all the team. Right now, it's just me. But I'm definitely representing here Fableware and Firecast. We've been working on this game since 2014, so it's been the latter half of 2014, 15, 16, 17, and at last we're releasing. It is very emblematic because, after all, this is a game very, very, very drenched in not only from an aesthetic standpoint, we're very connected with the classic Disney animations. So Sword in the Stone, Sleeping Beauty, and especially Black Cauldron. These are all animations that are very important to us. And aside from that, we're also strongly connected with mechanics. You mentioned that turn-based strategy is your favorite genre. And I think that's a wise choice because we're very, very fond of games like the Banner Saga, Shadowrun Returns, Final Fantasy Tactics, of course. That's a very, very strong inspiration for us. And as you mentioned, I'm also dressed in a very hipster and indie manner as a king. But this is not by chance because right here with me I have the Excalibur sword. And the game is, in fact, a retelling of the Excalibur legends. You don't get to play as King Arthur. That's me, not you. But you do get to play as Uther, who is actually King Arthur's father.
King Arthur's father.
When Uther and
Exactly.
Merlin arrived,
So it's think of it as sort of a prologue. Think of it as King Arthur origins in a way.
Lord seeth the knight's soul,
King
but
Arthur
Merlin urged a distraught Uther down the
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's not even year zero. It's like, since it's before his birth, we're actually, so we wanted to connect different elements. I mean, Merlin is in the game and not by chance. Whoever's into mythology and Arthurian mythology is going to notice that Merlin is a very present character and very important to the lore of that specific mythology, even before King Arthur is born. So we connected, not by chance. In the game, you'll see actual realms that historically existed, such as Anglia, Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, Kent. You have all those, but it's not meant to be a historically accurate game. It's actually a game that mixes the elements of fiction and history to put them together and play with these elements in a way that what if that happened, or what would be if we had alchemy still present in Broken Britannia. So all of these elements are put together to create this mix and match of fiction and history, but we do recognize that this is a very strongly connected universe with other elements of European history as well.
Okay, so this is the first chapter of Sword Legacy Omen called Failed Vows, and we're controlling two characters, start with Uther and Merlin, and it's a very kind of gentle introduction to the game, introduces how you explore the world and some of the combat mechanics, and I think, I hope a lot of people would agree, like, that some of the first impressions of the game is that actually it's a very beautiful and attractive tactical RPG. You know, the detail in these backgrounds and the characters very rich, and I think that's really particularly good because, as you can see with the point and click interface, you can explore these worlds outside of battle to your heart's content, which is quite unusual for the genre actually. A lot of tactical RPGs just kind of go from one battle to another with maybe some, I don't know, some base building in between or some kind of talking head story. But in Sword Legacy Omen, you can explore, you can loot, as you're seeing here. There's a very kind of rich environment to explore, lots of lore to discover as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to note, Ash, that we wanted to create this experience in which you wouldn't only battle, but you would also get the chance to, like you said, explore everything that's taking place, everything that's happening. And I think that's really important because when you're exploring, your movement is, you're free to move around. You're not necessarily taking turns. The turn-based combat, as it's self-explanatory, but it begins obviously when you go into a specific encounter. So it's really nice to see that we were able to create this mix of mechanics and allow freedom when you want to have freedom to look for secrets and solve riddles, but also go into very strategic play when battle begins.
So yeah, as you can see, I've been looting a whole bunch of stuff, which we'll be able to look at and equip in a second. But also, Uther can't get to everything, so there's a chest here that is locked. But I have a feeling there'll be a solution to that just around the corner.
Your solution is certainly waiting for you, but I won't give any details. Just to send a shout out to Don Razor. Don Razor has just posted that he'll be buying the game later today. Thank you so much, Don Razor. And not only that, but Don Razor is an active member of the forums in Steam as well.
Excellent. Thanks for watching, Don. I can see a question coming up on the screen now from my able assistant. Can you give an example of how we might solve a riddle using character abilities?
I think your answer, Don, is just about to happen. Take a look at what Ash is playing right now. Take a look at what Ash will do. This is a conversation that takes place in the first level of the game, and you can see Merlin, Uther, Dwayne, and another character just about to get in sort of a slight bicker. So you'll notice that they're actually trying to find a solution to get out of the dungeon, and this specific character that is locked in the cell, Gwen, right there, as you can see, Gwen actually has a solution to that riddle.
And you'll notice as well, Gwen is quite foul-mouthed. This is not a script for children.
That is correct, Ash. And I think it's a very interesting detail. I mean, not as a detail, but every character in Sword Legacy has their own style. So Gwen is a thief, and she's actually, you get to see this throughout the game, but she's a character that all the time mentions that she didn't have the privilege of being raised as other nobles. So whenever she speaks, she makes it pretty clear what her stance is and what she thinks. She has a lot of attitude. And the same thing goes for other characters as well. Some are going to be more polite, some are going to use more complicated words. Merlin might sound like he's always putting a riddle for you to solve whenever he speaks. But that's actually how each of these characters convey their personalities. And Gwen specifically is an interesting character in this case because she's locked in a cell and Merlin is actually taunting her, saying, "Hey, would you kindly open your cell door?" And you'll notice what happens next.
So she is a thief, capable of picking locks, which begs the question: why did she stay in that cell for so long? But maybe she was staying in the cell waiting for the right team members to come along.
You could say that given the circumstances, Mercia has just been invaded, so she might have been waiting all this time for the right opportunity to leave.
It might be the safest place to be.
You're right about that.
And also, so now we have Gwen in the party, and we also have, I pronounce his name Dwayne, but maybe it's Dwan?
No, I mean, Dwayne sounds just about right. That's how we call him as well.
Great. So, I mean, one thing that's really cool is you can switch active control in the exploration scenes between any of the characters. And it's really good to be Gwen because, as we said earlier, she can tick any lock.
Yeah, and that's actually one of her talents. So every character that you can play with, right now you've got access to 4, but every character you can play with has two talents that are actually like passive bonuses that accompany them throughout the whole game. So in Gwen's case, one of her talents is actually being able to unlock chests and locked doors, for example.
And eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed that when we collected the lore, and there are 6 pieces of lore to find in this chapter, we also got some party renown. We got +2 party renown, which will come in quite handy later in the game. It's very, very important. So finding as much lore as you can, I think is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, definitely. This is actually part of the structure of the game to incentivize players to always go and look for more information, for secrets, for documents, because that's how you find more about the world of Sword Legacy, but that's how you also see character interactions. This document, for example, right there, the one with the bounty notice, it's a very good example of how specifically characters react to what's happening in the world.
Okay, so let's just collect this item in here, and then we'll be on our merry way.
If any of you have more questions, Don, hope your question has been answered. Questions, let us know.
Okay, so this is the first battle of the game, and I think it's quite a gentle introduction to the battle system. Only one person to defeat, so it would take someone who's really not paying attention to be overcome by this. And we've got these nice little kind of tutorial messages here, which I'm not going to dwell on because obviously I'm a Sword Legacy Omen combat expert, and I'll just talk you through it. So, grid-based system, which should be familiar to anyone who's played a tactical game before. Moving certain numbers of squares increases the number of action points required. Gwen's got 10 action points, so she can move quite far, although she's got some tricks up her sleeve to move even further without spending too many
definitely.
points.
I mean, Ash, if you use her skill Dash, it's like super useful because Dash will follow the cost. Sorry?
I'm going to do exactly that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A wise decision, a wise decision.
So she can dash right next to this unlucky guy here. I'm going to give him a little stabby.
In fact, what's also interesting about Dash is that you can even use it as a skill to go through hazardous environments like fire, or later on when we have like tar, or even venom. So what's interesting is that Gwen can even go through characters as well. Dash is a very useful skill, and I think that all of the skills in Sword Legacy, they are very useful to make you think strategically about combat, because sometimes combat might seem very daunting if you're just focusing on using regular action points. But if you decide to take a careful look at the skills, like Merlin's teleport, for example, you'll notice that all of these skills have very intelligent uses if you think carefully about what to do with them. Also, Blinking Duck just asked if the game comes with a bottle of scotch, and Don says that's available as a DLC. I recommend Sword Legacy with some nice mead.
Oh yes, mead would be perfect. And there's even a character later on who I could imagine making some mead, that's for sure. So Mike Field, sorry to interrupt, I think there might be a little bit of lag between us on the chat, so apologies for any crosstalk that we get here. Mike Field is asking, how long is the game? Well, that depends on how good you are at it, really. I found, typically about 8 to 10 hours. This is not one of those 100-hour RPGs full of random encounters and characters and that sort of thing. It's a very finely crafted story and adventure with unique characters, with abilities that have been designed around those characters and their characteristics. So a 10-hour quality adventure, I would say. What say you, Arthur?
I totally agree. So when we designed the game, we definitely wanted to create an experience that we felt that anyone could get to the end. I mean, it is a story-driven experience, so most certainly what we wanted to was not necessarily have you have to face this daunting campaign that would take 30 hours to finish. Each of the levels, like you mentioned, are handmade, let's put it this way. They're very tailor-made to tell the story of the game. And of course, your strategy affects how long it'll take to complete the game. But I'd say that 8 to 10 hours is a nice average, although we've had players that, when testing the game, took more than 12 hours. And one of the reasons for that, I think one of the reasons is that you can also replay the levels if you want to. If you feel your strategy has not been successful enough, then you can go ahead and you can replay a level at any point, just to make sure if you want to try out the best strategies. What else? You can also, if you want to, go back to the levels to collect lore you missed. So we're very interested in having players feel very at ease with the experience and enjoy as much as possible, to know that they can train as much as they'd like in order to face greater challenges. Because you do need to focus on getting better equipment, you do need to focus on using your renown to unlock better skills as well.
So before I end this turn, I just want to draw attention to a couple of things I've done then in battle. First of all, the characters who you can see with the yellow kind of pulsing rings around their feet, they've been put into Overwatch, which is a mechanic you might be familiar with if you played tactical shooting games. Well, we have it too, and very simply it means that if an enemy walks into that character's physical kind of area of effect, they're going to get a little smack with a melee weapon. So it's a very useful skill to have, especially if you've got a few action points left over. If you don't have any action points left over, or if you don't have enough, the other thing we have made use of is willpower. So as you can see there, you can call upon your willpower to give yourself a stat boost, and also to give yourself more action points, so you get a little bit of an extra action during the turn. However, if you use too much willpower, there is a chance that you will panic, which can cause you to flee the battlefield. Did I get that exactly right, Arthur?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about one of our favorite mechanics, willpower. So that's pretty much it, in the sense that willpower is a very interesting gamble in the game. You can use willpower to buff your stats, get more action, more attack stats, attack points, defense points, and action points as well. But of course, if you run out of willpower, then that's exactly it. Your characters can panic, either by fleeing, by freezing, or even by going berserk. And then when they go berserk, they will attack anyone who's next to them, regardless of being a friend or a foe.
Okay, that's all done and dusted, and you saw a nice kind of critical hit there, which you get a bit of visual flourish for as the camera zooms in, and you see quite a lot of blood and gore.
Exactly, that's one of our overkills, and just so people understand, we're very much fans of games like Fallout 1 and 2, and of course Baldur's Gate. I remember all the time when I was controlling my characters, and for some reason one of my characters was dealt a critical hit, and they exploded into like chunks of meat, and that was very traumatizing for me. But we wanted to bring that traumatizing experience back as well for Sword Legacy whenever you deal critical damage to your enemies.
Okay, so we have another question in the chat. Are there any choices in the storyline or optional quests? Well, Arthur, as the lead writer, I think you're well placed to answer this.
Yeah, definitely. So, Sword Legacy is, like I said, a story-driven experience. It's mostly linear in the sense that you have these specific levels that tell the story of the game, and you progress through these levels as the story progresses as well. It's very finely tuned. You do have decisions that you can make. One of them, I can't spoil it, but there is a specific decision that has some story repercussions, let's put it that way. However, what I think is also very interesting is the choice of characters you can take with you on your quests. So if you're throughout the game, you'll be able to select up to 8 characters. Right now, Ash is playing with 4 of them. This is like the initial party of the game, 4 of them. But whenever you've got access to the 8 of them, you need to take 4. And by choosing which 4 you want to take with you on those quests, it means you'll get access to different dialogues, of course. Mm-hmm. So if you don't take Gwen with you on a quest, she'll obviously not be there to comment on the lore you're collecting or what's happening in the story. So what we wanted to do was make the player feel perceived. That was and still is our main priority. It doesn't matter if you necessarily make moral decisions in the sense of let's change this major event in the story, but actually what you're doing is you're always affecting how the story is told by your daily actions in the game, let's put it that way. Also, just wanted to give a shout out to CRF Bobson right there. He's from this website, Perdiu Save. It's a Brazilian website, and he's saying Sword Legacy is the best Brazilian game of 2018. All right. Oh, wow. Thanks a lot, man. Thank you so much for your time, Blinking Duck. He's saying he's thinking of getting the game, but is exhausted right now and is going to crash. Well, it's great to know that you were watching us, and thank you so much for your support.
Okay, and this is a save point. Should need no explanation, but a very good thing to make use of, especially when we're about to go into a slightly tougher battle.
Exactly, yeah. So what's interesting to note is in this second battle, Ash, you're actually going to be incentivized to use the environment in your favor. And by that, I mean, it goes all the way from barrels to jars to what's happening, different situations in the combat in the battlefield. And of course, this varies from level to level.
So before we go into that battle, I'm just going to check my equipment, see if we've got any armor or weapons that would be good to equip. The loot largely is randomly generated, so at this point in the game I could have collected any kind of weapons or armor, and it just so happens I've collected a war lance, which is equipable by lancers. So, if I'm not mistaken, we should be able to give that to Dwayne.
Exactly. So Dwayne is the best character. I mean, he's the Lancer class. Each of the 8 characters in the game, they all have their own specific classes. You're not going to control 2 characters of the same class. So it's always very interesting to understand what's the best weapon you want to acquire for your characters. And that makes a lot of difference because, like, getting better equipment really affects. So how do you affect attack, defense, and other stats? That's through equipment. You don't get to actually level up. You don't get experience points to raise your attack or defense in the game. What you do is you use renown to unlock other skills. But if you want to raise attack and defense, that's when you need to pay attention to your resources and items that you have in your inventory to make sure you have the best equipment to get everyone ready for battle. And Don Razor says that he wanted to share props to the writers because the writing feels very genuine. May Excalibur bless you, Don Razor. Thank you so much for the compliments.
So we're now going to make use of another kind of nifty game feature, which is the ability to push objects in battle. So I'm going to use Uther's shield shove arrow. That's a very simple example of what can be done with this mechanic as introduced in this battle. But as the game goes on, you can set up quite complex combos as you push things around, push characters into another and attack them. It's kind of a device that's left to the player. Make use of it as you will, use your imagination. But you may also find in certain battles there are scenarios set up where it encourages you to make use of the environment. It may be more tactically advantageous for you to use the environment than it would be to attack straight on and risk getting hurt. And you'll definitely see lots of that through the game.
Yeah, and what I think what's really interesting is that it's not that the game is meant to be a puzzle game. That's not it. It's a tactical RPG. But if you take a look at the levels that were created, you'll notice exactly what you said, Ash, that the positioning of the objects is not by chance. All of it is meant to create a very interesting strategy if you're willing to make good use of that. By pushing objects, for example, you don't deal damage. So if you decide to push, let's say, a barrel, or if you just push a barrel, you're not going to destroy the barrel. What you're going to do is just move it around. And that may sound like, duh, that's okay, I get the point. But then if you think about it, and you notice that you can also push characters, then things get more strategic. So you can push allies or foes as well. And then what happens is, if they collide into something, they get dealt damage as well. But it's a mobility skill, so it really affects on how you decide to play your strategy.
You'll notice with me, I'm a big fan of just hitting things.
Well, that's one way to go about it, right? If you hit them enough, they won't get back up.
Okay, Merlin, perhaps do something? No, probably not. No.
Also, we've got a question here from Dark8Light. And how many characters can we use at a time? 4 max. So that's it, Dark. You can use 4 characters max. I mean, actually, let me rephrase it. You can take up to 4 characters at a time to a specific quest or level. The catch is that depending on what characters you use, you can also have more units in combat. So in certain levels, you'll meet other characters. So that means you might control a 5th character in your party. And depending on what character and the class of that character you're using, you can also summon allies as well. So it doesn't mean you necessarily control 4 characters, a maximum 4 characters, but it does mean that you can only take 4 characters on a quest.
Okay. So there's an archer here with some health left, so somebody's going to get hurt, and it's Merlin. And it's a back attack for extra damage, unfortunately. It's okay, he still lives. Let's see.
Ow! So, yeah, Merlin's taking quite the beating.
There we go. Didn't even have
One interesting tip, Ash, which is also very useful, is that players will notice that depending on from where you choose to attack your opponent, that makes a lot of difference. So if you do a flank attack, that raises your hit percentage. If you do a back attack, that's 100% chance of hitting the enemy. So this goes both ways, right? For both allies and enemies, which means if you decide to attack an enemy and then for some reason you still have your back facing that specific character, you can right click and without the cost of action points, choose where that character should face.
Always good to not leave your back exposed, I think, in video games and in life.
A life lesson, no doubt.
Okay, so we're reaching the end of this chapter. How do we get out?
Yeah, and that's an example, a very simple example of one of the different interactions you have with the environment. Where you're supposed to go, what puzzles you can solve, etc.
Nice results screen there. we can see that I missed one piece of lore, so that if you're a completionist, there's a reason to go back to the stage, find that other piece, and of course have a read and find out more of the backstory of Broken Britannia. And we got some renown, some bonus renown, which we'll be spending very shortly.
Yeah, and you always have the option of replaying a level. It's really interesting because the idea is that you always are comfortable with the strategy you're putting together, and you don't miss any content if you're willing to go back and find what you left behind.
More than ever, theirs was a broken Britannia.
So if you're just joining us, this is Sword Legacy Omen, a brand new tactical RPG that's out on Steam today. It should be available to purchase right now with a 20% launch discount. If you're in the chat, drop in any questions as you watch, and I'll do my best to answer, as will Arthur. I'm Ashley, I'm from Team 17, the game's publisher.
Count on us, and welcome to the Sword Legacy livestream, launch livestream. Caliber here to bless us on our journey, so you're more than welcome to leave us any questions.
Yes, please.
What's interesting to note is also that we have different ways of telling the story in the game. So what you just went through, Ash, is what we call a cinematic, and right now you're actually starting a cutscene. So we have different ways of having characters interact with each other. We have a narrator, so when the cinematic plays, we have a specific narrator that is sort of reminiscing and thinking of what happened in the past and recounting these tales of Uther. You have direct dialogues, as is what happens right now with this very animated feel and look. That's where we draw inspiration from. We're very big fans of classic animation, Western classic animation from Disney, for example. So that's what you get to see. And then during the levels, you get to see the characters talking to each other through speech bubbles that are in the comic book style. So we really wanted to have the art style of the game reflect all of these inspirations that are very important to us.
Yeah, and I'm actually a big fan of kind of visual novels, as they're called in Japan. These games where they're more about reading a story than they are about gameplay. Sword Legacy Omen isn't one of those games. It's very much an interactive strategy RPG, but it has elements of the kind of visual novel adventure game genre. So if you like a good story in your game, it is here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a story-driven experience, and that was a priority for us during development. We really wanted to make things feel very crafted and push as much this emotional boundary. So there's a question here from Don Razor. Are there attacking from behind, either overall or as a character-specific ability? Very good question, Don, because it's actually both. So as I mentioned before, if you do a flank attack, your hit percentage is higher than if you're doing like a frontal attack. But if you're attacking from behind, like completely from behind, that means you have a 100% chance of hitting. That's like a guaranteed hit. On the other hand, there are specific talents for each character, and Gwen, for example, has a talent that involves backstabbing as well. So strategic positioning is always a priority when playing Sword Legacy, but on the other hand, you also have talents or specific attributes that are inherent to each character, and they affect the gameplay as well.
The phase of the game we're about to move into is a camping spot. So in between battles, you explore Britannia on the map screen, as you saw. There are towns you can rest in and shop in for extra equipment. But in between those towns, there are camping spots to rest in. And I'm afraid, at those camping spots, you can also be attacked.
Exactly. You can be ambushed if you decide to rest, but resting is effectively the cheapest way of recovering both body points and renown. So if by any chance you have characters who are stressed, if by any chance you have characters who are stressed because they're out of willpower, or they're like gravely wounded, then resting is definitely the best course of action.
And what I neglected to do just before this area was to upgrade my skills, which is very silly of me.
Why?
I'm sure I can handle it.
You wanted to raise the bar. I get it. I get it. Prove your tactics.
Okay.
So more questions here. Dark Light, are dungeons and environment randomly generated or set in stone kind of world? Well, like we said before, the game is linear in the sense that you have specific levels that are very story driven. So it's not a randomly generated game. This is not a roguelike game. What we do have are levels that are focused on the story beats, and they're tailor-made in the sense that every barrel, every jar positioned in the game is meant to incentivize the strategy on your behalf, either by using mobility skills or just aggressive skills as well. And Kitsune asked if there are any difficulty levels. You do have only one difficulty level, which is actually the story campaign itself. But like I said before, you can go back and train levels if you feel the game is too difficult for any reason, or even if you want to train your skills, because what we did was balance the game in a way that using not only the skills each character has, but also thinking of the environment strategically makes a lot of difference. I cannot reinforce this enough. It makes a huge difference if you know what skills to use, and it makes a huge difference if you look at your environment strategically and not only think of hitting things, but also how to push things, how to pull things, how to swap places with enemies. Merlin's teleport skill is like insanely useful in this manner because it allows you to swap places with any character or object in the game. It's not just for going somewhere, it's actually for swapping places. So once you handle that concept and once you start thinking of the teleport in this manner, which is slightly different from other games, then you'll notice that it'll make a lot of difference.
So, I was going to try that actually, but there's a cooldown effect on the teleport skill, which I've already used, so maybe we'll see that in a battle to come.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, the skills do have cooldown, like a cooldown timer, because the idea is to once again test the strategy. And for example, Overwatch, you can't spam Overwatch. If you use it once, then you'll have to wait a while until you use it again. But we're always balancing elements. So even if you, let's say you're playing your turn right now, and you can't think of a move for Dwayne, let's say. If you don't use all of his action points, it's fine, because you'll get a defense bonus based on how many action points you have unspent. Also, what's really cool, Ash, is that during the levels, you can also zoom in and zoom out if you'd like. So if you want to check out the battles up close and see enemies and foes clashing with each other, you can do that. But also if you want to have a more macro and outer view, like a general view of the battlefield, which is what's happening right now, that's also fine. And you can just make sure you have the overview of what's going on. So that's also cool for let's say, people who want eye candy and want to check the game up close. Whenever an overkill happens as well, that's very interesting to note. You do have an automatic zoom because it's like this reward for dealing this super strong critical damage. So you do get a zoom, and you do get to see some gory animation happening to make sure that that enemy will never get up again.
There we go, Overwatch in action. Should be quite simple. Famous last words. Good. Now we can explore the campsite and pick up any goodies that we find.
So we just got a very interesting question here from Celery, right? Asking, what are some of the top tier spells? Well, of course, if we're talking about spells, we'll definitely talk about Merlin, naturally. And, well, so what's interesting is you're asking about top tiered spells, but one of my favorites is, in fact, the teleport spell. With teleport, like I said before, you don't need to just go somewhere. You can switch places with enemies and objects. I mean, this sounds simple, but in combat, it makes a huge difference. It's amazing. But of course, you've got like your ever powerful and famous Fireball. And aside from the Fireball, what also I like a lot is Merlin's Chain Lightning. So he does have a lightning skill that if you zap it onto an enemy, every object or character adjacent will also be hit, and you can deal some insane damage if you position and you send the lightning skill at the right moment when you have a lot of enemies next to each other.
Okay, so we're about to enter Yorktown, which is where we can replenish our supplies, equip skills if we want to, before we go on to the next battle, so you get a little bit of a breather.
Uther and his companions crossed into Northumbria, and soon felt
always in between levels you do have, based on the progress of the story and what's going on,
a market town
you do have these
for its foreign trade.
cutscenes and different cinematics that will share more information. And once again, as I mentioned, you did say, Ash, before that Gwen can be followed out. You'll get to meet more and more characters and always see that they have different styles of expressing themselves. Either sometimes more polite, using complicated words, or just cursing, or feeling afraid, or more aggressive. It just varies from character to character. And Dawn Razor just asked, will Uther be able to equip dual flamethrowers and rocket jumping ability, please? We'll have that in the Sword Legacy rocket jump DLC. You'll see.
Okay, so this is the Blacksmith, where we can buy some weapons and armor, all with different costs. We don't have very much gold at the moment, but I have an amethyst that I can sell to get more gold, so I can probably get up to just under 100 gold in total. There you go, just drag and drop to sell. Is there anything I want? Get some. Oh, I can almost afford some shoes.
So, what's interesting is Luther. Oh, aha! Luther is asking, can you guys show us how to unlock more skills? Ash is right now taking care of his shopping at the Blacksmith, which is a very important part of the game. Like I said, without better equipment, you're definitely going to be at a disadvantage against other enemies. And since loot is random, it also means you can find different loot that you might not want to use, and you can always sell it, just like Ash did, to get more gold and be able to buy other armor, weapons, etc. Before we even had a question, was it from, I think from Celery, asking about the skills, and then someone said something about not spoiling too much. That's not a problem, actually, because whenever you start the game and you check out a character's inventory or a character's page, basically their hub, you can see all of the 10 unlockable skills that are available. It doesn't mean you will be able to unlock them right away, because you do need renown. But if you choose to do so, you can read the description for each of the skills before unlocking them. That's super easy, and it's very good because you can play the game thinking of what skills you think are going to be the best to be unlocked later on.
So in certain other RPGs, you might find that you have skill points per character in order to progress and unlock their skills. Actually, in Sword Legacy Omen, you have a pool of party renown. So I have 43 renown for the whole party at the beginning of this screen, and then you can spend those points on any character you like. So if you really want to, you can put all of your party renown to one character and unlock all of Merlin's spells as quickly as you like. Although it must be said, at the start of the game, you're not going to be able to unlock everything.
Yeah, and this affects your strategy as well, because let's say you have renown enough to unlock different skills for different characters. That's an option. Or let's say you want to use all the renown you just acquired to unlock one very good skill that you think might be the best for a specific character, for Uther, for example. So that's interesting to note as well, because you have this freedom of choosing how to prep your characters and unlock a powerful skill that in other games could have been like the last skill to unlock. You have that option here.
Okay, so chapter 2. So Arthur, what exactly are these pigs doing here? I've always wondered, are they eating the corpses?
Yes. The sad truth, Ash, is they are eating the corpses. This is, I mean, we're discussing it in a sort of tragic comic way, but the truth is Yorktown has just gone through like some very, very serious problems. And this is part of, so Wessex has just invaded Mercia. Uther is not by chance a fallen knight. He has just, like, him and Merlin and Gwen and Dwayne, they've just run off from Mercia. They just fled. So right now what they're doing is seeking the Lord of Northumbria, who is Lord Cadern, and they're seeking the Lord of Northumbria for help. So that's why this is a story, this is a journey that spans all across Broken Britannia, because you do need to go after the different lords of these realms, Kent, Anglia, and Northumbria, because you're seeking help. You can't take back Wessex without an army. I'm sorry, you can't take back Mercia and face Wessex without an army. This is the grand scheme of things, but obviously you'll see how the story unfolds as you go through each level. And right now, what's happening is in Yorktown, in Northumbria, pigs are eating corpses on the street because apparently this very bizarre plague is spreading. And you do get to know more about the plague if you find a specific diary, which is actually a piece of lore in the game. And you do get to read more about what happened in Yorktown and where Cadern is supposed to be. So Dawn Razor is still very curious about Uther's flamethrower, but I do have a very interesting comment for you, Dawn Razor. If you're looking for, let's say, a character that is into tinkering and creating and crafting mechanical inventions, something like Elon Musk, then you should definitely take a look and check out a specific character who appears later in the game. And let's just say he's something of a tinkerer, of an inventor, of a blacksmith as well.
Okay, I'm going to try something a little bit experimental.
All right, do that.
See what happens. Okay, so this kind of tar substance now.
Exactly. It drains action points if anyone steps on it, friend or foe.
Just have to get it out of the way, I think.
Oh, so I see what you did, Ash. You actually hit the jar, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
When actually what I could have done was push it into... Yeah. However, what I want to So I have no idea if this will work, but I have now got Merlin's firewall spell.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to see if this substance is flammable.
So Don is just welcoming Vito, saying, "Welcome to our first." That's actually with Merlin. It's probably Merlin's little shop of horrors. And yes, he does look deranged, which was very intentional, and we're very proud of that. He's not your typical wizard in a blue hat. Aha! Aha! I like how you think, Ash. I like how you think.
Now, I probably should have waited until they were actually standing in it. But I just like starting fires.
All right. No, so that was amazing. I mean, this is part of what we wanted to achieve with the Sword Legacy combat, with the Sword Legacy strategy. If any of you guys missed this, so Ash hit a jar of Negretto, which is this alchemic substance, kind of like tar, and if anyone stepped on it, they would lose action points. So it makes you slower. It makes you get stuck to the ground. Oh, that was amazing! And then you used Gwen's dash to go through the fire. Now that's some mad skills. Nice. I like how you think, Ash.
Now, let's see if it actually does me any good. I've been a little bit haphazard with my tactics here, but that's a good thing. It's actually as I try out and experiment with these different things, I start to realise, if I just did this one thing slightly differently or that thing slightly differently, it would get better results. So I know that next time I encounter this situation, I will do even more impressive things.
And now, so was it really interesting? I liked a lot that you can set things on fire. So by using Merlin's firewall, you actually set the Negretto on fire, and now you've just created, from a simple firewall, it just turned into like this massive fire area. And now with Merlin, you actually have height advantage since you're on higher ground than the enemy. So Vito's asking if Polish language is coming soon. At the moment, Vito, we have the game localized for, well, of course, English, as you're seeing on screen. We also have it for French, German, Russian, and Brazilian Portuguese. We are, well, I'm a great fan of Polish games as well. So, of course, we would love to take this to Polish. Who knows in the future? At the moment, these are the languages that we have in store. But rest assured, we're always looking out and hearing what players want as well.
Now, I have created a problem for myself here because my two strongest fighters are on the other side of the fire and I have to walk through it.
Either you walk through it or, I don't know, you wait for something to happen.
But if
Alex, you're asking about the, you're mentioning about the screen. We do have a very stylized cell shading, and we do have elements in the game that are very strong in order to make this connection with animation. We do have a zoom in the game. Every now and then you'll see Ash zooming in, zooming out. So this might make a difference for you concerning the visuals. But keep in mind, this is a very stylized representation of animation as well. So that might be what's happening when you think of it as blurred. If not, this is actually how the game is represented as well. But let us know if you have any other questions. It's just that you don't have a specific option to change anything in the when it comes to specifically this sort of visual.
I'm just going to have to accept that Merlin might not make it.
I think he will. I think he will. I mean, he doesn't need to make it from the other side. I mean, it's doing pretty good. And so Don, you were asking about the flamethrowers and the rocket jump. Well, as you can see, you don't need a flamethrower to set things on flame. So you can always use the strategy. Think about Merlin and his firewall. People are asking again about the how long does it take? Just reinforcing, since it's a story-driven RPG, tactical RPG, we have an experience that lasts probably an average of something in between 8 to 10 hours. Of course, your mileage may vary according to the strategies and if you decide to play levels. If you run into random encounters when you're resting, you can be ambushed as well. So depending on what takes place, you might take longer than that. We have had players that have taken around 12 hours to finish the game, but that's the average, between 8 to 10.
So I've lost Merlin, unfortunately. But I think we'll be okay. Oh, and Gwen is panicking.
Yeah, so I thought Merlin was going to survive, but that's not what happened. But it's interesting to see that, once again, so the fact that Gwen is stressed out is very important. That's because it's part of the willpower mechanic. So willpower is this resource that you can use to buff your stats, attack, defense, and action points. However, if you run out of willpower, then characters can get stressed, and if they do get stressed, they can panic, which means they can either flee, free, or go berserk.
Okay. So things aren't looking too good for Uther and friends at the moment. They've lost their wizard. A couple of people are panicking. But it's not over yet. And actually, you know, this is good. It's good that you have someone on the stream who takes chances, because this way you get to see what happens when the chances don't pay off.
Exactly. I mean, it's all about experimenting, and if you decide to replay the level and try a different strategy, that's possible as well. So it is good to note that you should always try your best. I mean, the idea of using the firewall onto the Negretto substance is something that it's not like told you per se in the game, but it definitely, if you put together the descriptions of the jars, you'll see that one thing matches the other. And that was a very smart decision.
And next time, I think I would just make one small change, which is to wait until the soldiers are stood in that area. And then set on
until
fire.
they've decided to cross, right?
Yeah. Oh, we missed some lore. Oh, and there's a notification about Overcooked 2 for everybody.
And then what's also interesting to note is that since Uther and Gwen are out of willpower, they're stressed. And of course, this carries on to the next combat. So if by chance you start the next combat and you're still out of willpower, they might panic. Who knows? We'll see. But on the other hand, what's also interesting is that if you manage to defeat an enemy without using any willpower points on that turn, you can regain willpower. So for that specific character who has defeated an enemy, you'll be able to at least stabilize things and avoid panicking for that specific character. And then what's also very valid to note is the different, you've got different options for potions. Not only equipment, armor, and weapons, these are extremely valuable. But if you take a look at the different potions available in the game, they'll also affect your experience as well. You've got potions like Nightshade Extract that give you more action points, and those can be very valuable during combat.
I think I'm going to need them.
Well, you don't have Merlin anymore, but we'll see what happens. Also, very interesting to explain and to let people know. Oh wait, so now we've got. Let's check that out. So Felix has just popped in, and this is the second combat of the second level. We had a question before asking if you could have more than 4 players in the party. You can only take 4 with you at a time, but you cannot. But you can have more than 4 with you if you find characters during combat or during levels, like as is the case with Felix, or if you summon them, depending on what characters you're using as well. You can summon allies too. And then you've also got in this combat the water barrel. That's also very interesting because the water barrel actually washes away any hazardous substances that may be on the floor. So the Negretto substance, which is kind of like the tar substance, or even if you've got fire, if you push a water barrel, you'll douse that fire out. Awesome. Checking out some comments here. Thank you so much, Dark 8 Light, for your support, for your participation. Thank you, everyone who's asking questions. We'll get to them very shortly. Thank you so much. It's awesome to be able to chat with you guys. We've got a question here for, is it Steam controller friendly? Awesome question, because the official controls for the game are effectively mouse and keyboard. But since the Steam controller allows you to mess around with the mouse as well, so the Steam controller is definitely a controller that you can use to play, and we'll definitely look into creating a specific configuration or scheme if it is necessary, because the Steam controller already has like the mouse and keyboard scheme set up. But if you do think it's necessary, feel free to configure and propose your own scheme. The community can propose different schemes, controller schemes, on Steam as well. But let us know if you have a specific need. That's a bit hard to say your username, but B255EA006.
Okay. This is one of those situations where you might just want to stop and think about things before acting.
Well, the catch here is that Felix, the priest you just found, cannot be defeated. If he is defeated, then it's like you failed this mission. So the greatest challenge is making sure Felix stays, if possible, unharmed. And if not, then we'll see what happens. But hopefully you'll be able to pull something off.
Okay, so first thing I reckon is to get him out of harm's way. That'd be a good idea. Let's just get him over there. Or even there. He got stuck there.
So let's see what strategy are you cooking up at? We'll see. And then we've got also another question from Commissar Antonios. So Commissar Antonios, you cannot rotate. We have a fixed view for the levels. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, but you can also, whenever you have characters behind specific obstacles, etc., we always have them highlighted. So visibility is never a problem. And we chose to do this in this way because we wanted to really emphasize a different art style for the game. So hopefully that answers your question.
So my strategy for this turn is to play defensively. Try and create a perimeter around Felix and put the Overwatch on.
Kitsune made an excellent question. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Kitsune joined us yesterday in our Brazilian stream. Thank you so much for joining again. It is awesome to be here chatting with you guys and know that you are supporting us as well. If not, then welcome, Kitsune. I might have mistaken you. Not. But the question is, if a character in the party dies in combat, is he or she available in the next mission? The answer is yes, because as I mentioned before, Sword Legacy is a tactical RPG. We're not a roguelike game, so permadeath is not on the table. However, it does not mean that leaving your characters to, let's say, die or be defeated is, let's put it this way, something you should feel comfortable with. So if a character is defeated in combat, that specific character will survive in the long run, but he or she will have a gravely wounded penalty. Which means if you have a gravely wounded penalty, the stats of that specific character are going to be lower. The cap is going to be lower. And if the cap is lower, that basically means that you won't be able to have that character in the best state for fighting. If you want that character to get back up and running for next fights or encounters, then you should rest with that character, and you can do that at an inn or on the road as well. You can camp too. So Zelon just asked a question here. Does the game have more than one ending? As we mentioned before, it is a very story-driven experience in the sense that we wanted to tell a tale as best as we could in a very dramatic and emotional fashion. So it's not a linear story, but all the time we want players to feel perceived. Depending on what characters you take with you in levels and in combat, you get to see different dialogues. Also, this means that you don't have different endings per se, but you do have decisions in the game that either, depending on, like I said, who you take with you, affects the dialogue in the levels, and also a specific decision that is connected to the story and has, let's say, both mechanical and moral repercussions. And we have another question here about Chinese. We do not have yet Polish and Chinese in the game. This is not something we can guarantee at the moment, but we would love to add in the future if possible. So rest assured, we have 5 languages at the moment: English, French, German, and English, French, German, Brazilian, Portuguese, and Russian. These are the 5 languages available at the moment, and if possible in the future, yes, definitely, we would love to add more. But that's what we can guarantee at the moment. One thing I wanted to point out is, if you guys noticed, so Ash is very, very involved in combat right now, trying to survive, doing his best. And we did see a foe panic. That was something really interesting, because it means that foe ran out of willpower. And if that foe ran out of willpower, then he can either flee, freeze in place, or go berserk. Any specific strategies in mind, Ash? What do you have in mind?
Well, I think I did a good job of playing defensively there. It really helped me, let the enemies come to me, and then use Overwatch to, do them a lot of damage, and then finish them off the next turn. So there's only one enemy left to defeat now, and that's an archer. Obviously, the archer can strike me from a distance, so it's very important now that I just get to that archer as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have Merlin with you. Sad music. Let's play the sad music. But even if Merlin is not in your party because he was defeated, the archer is a very interesting victim when it comes to Merlin's teleport. So if you had the teleport skill with you, you could use Merlin to swap places with the archer. But you do have Gwen, and Gwen has the dash skill, right? So sometimes the dash skill can prove to be very useful.
not quite enough in this case to get there, but
oh,
hopefully
almost
it'll be
there,
fine.
almost there, almost there. So Greg MCS, thank you so much for answering the live. Yeah, there's every now and then we're talking about something in the game, so it's hard to answer all the questions. Thank you so much for doing that for us. We have another question from Zelon. How long did you work on the game? Did it change much? Do you have a favorite region? Wow. Okay. Awesome questions. So we've been working, just so you know, Zelon, this is actually a co-production between two Brazilian indie studios. I represent Fableware. We've got Firecast. So we're both from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And then our publisher is Team 17. Ash is representing our publisher here. And we all work together on the game. But the development itself started in the latter half of 2014 with Firecast. And then since 2015, Fableware has been on board working on the narrative design, the story. I'm the lead writer, the narrative director for the game. But we're always very connected, discussing a lot of elements connected to game design as well. So narrative design is game design, and there's story without being aware of the different intricacies and peculiarities of the game. All right, so the combat is over, and Ash was able to rescue Felix, the priest, the crazy priest from the Order of Terra, who was in your town, all alone.
I'm very relieved about that, actually, because my bold experimentation at the beginning of the chapter resulted in you know, a death of an ally and loss of hit points.
That's awesome to see on the quest complete screen. So take a look at that. This is very interesting for everyone who's watching the stream. Right now, you can see that Merlin was defeated. So that answers the question about permadeath. Merlin was defeated, and you can see the little skull representing that he's gravely wounded. He's not dead, he's gravely wounded. So the cap for his attack, defense, body points, etc. is lowered. And like I said, you can relieve him of this specific consequence if you rest, either on the road or at an inn. Ash found 3 out of 4 pieces of lore. So if you're a completionist, by all means, feel free to replay any of the levels at any time. In fact, you can choose to replay the levels from the map screen, and by doing that, you need to access the diary. And when you access the journal, the diary, what you do is you actually get a recap of the whole story. So at no point whatsoever in the game are you missing out on content. If you want to see something that was said before, you can check out the log in the levels, and you have all of the dialogues, all of the interactions, and even all of the combat actions that took place. And at the world map screen, you can also check the journal for the overview of the story and little episodes like previously on Sword Legacy, that sort of thing.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to stop playing and leave it at that for now. The reason being, we don't want to show so much of the game that we don't leave any surprises for everyone watching. We'd much rather that you play it yourselves and have a good time, and then come to the Steam forums and tell us, like, how have you been finding the game? What tactics have you been using? Did you do any crazy experiments, as you saw myself doing it in that battle just now? If so, let us know the little tricks that you tried, and did they pay off? What unexpected things happened? What else can we say? The game's out today on Steam, and there's a 20% launch discount. So, I really recommend that if you are interested in the game, you think it looks like it's for you, like, this is the week to get it, because you'll save yourself some money.
Definitely.
Arthur, any final words before we go?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone. I can see Greg and pretty much everyone else who's watching, all of you 50 viewers. It's amazing to be in touch with all of you. Please be in touch with us as well via the Steam forums. Feel free to join the Team 17 Discord channel as well. We've got over there room for all of you to ask questions directly to us, the developers. I'm always answering whenever possible as well the Steam forums, and I love chatting with you guys. I mean, final words, what I wanted to put in just like a very short but I think lasting pitch is that if you're into strategy, so if you're into tactical RPGs, if you're into nice stylized art, and I can say that without a problem, I'm the lead writer, so I'm actually praising here the work of all the amazing artists on the team. We're very proud of all of the process that took place to reach where we got to with the art of the game. There was a specific question, can't remember who asked it, but if a lot of things, oh yeah, the Living Darkness asked, sorry, Zelon asked if the game changed much. And I mean, it did change a lot, and I can honestly say that it changed and for the better. It was awesome because we saw the game changing not only aesthetically but also mechanically, and we balanced and refined, and this was a process and a very lengthy and interesting process that took place from all of us working together. So it was awesome. It still is awesome to be here in touch with you guys, and so if you're into strategy, if you're into art, and if you are into, of course, this retelling of the Excalibur legends happening before King Arthur is born, if you're into mythology and if you're into this very story-driven experience, then I definitely think you're going to have a lot of fun with Sword Legacy as well.
Excellent. Arthur mentioned there the Steam forums, the Team 17 Discord. Don't forget, there's also Sword Legacy Omen.
Oh,
Facebook
awesome!
page
So
and
Don
Twitter.
Razor said, "Playthrough, awesome, Don. Hope you have a lot of fun. Share the word. I mean, if you guys are liking the game, if you're interested in a concept, if you know someone who's into strategy RPGs as well, definitely let us know."
Cool. Excellent. Well, Arthur, thank you very much
All
for
right,
joining us.
Mango, you just bought it. May the gods bless you. I bestow you night with the Excalibur sword right here.
There's a little bit of a delay through the broadcast, which is why Arthur and I are talking at cross purposes here. But I'm okay with it because I got to see him knight someone over the internet, so it was well worth it. Okay, so we're going to say goodbye now. So goodbye from me at Team 17. Time to say goodbye, Arthur. I don't think Arthur can hear me. Arthur can't hear me. Let's drop into the Discord chat.
See you guys. It was awesome. Thank you so much. Let's stay in touch, and long live the legacy.
Brilliant. What would life be without some technical difficulties right at the end? Okay, goodbye everyone. Thanks for watching.